Let's leave this. Okay. Okay, so I have put it back on. I hope people have managed to. Find it. Please let anyone know on the previous stream. I'm not in it right now. To come back. One moment. Let me see if I can send this while it's still open to people. Hold on. Okay. Trying. Benedicite. I am trying to put on the new link. Okay, hold on. Okay. All right, I'm back. Okay. Well, we've been talking to Sava, and before that, we were talking about the open challenge, and somebody brought up that they got a copy of the Book of the Parochial Use. Hold on, there's Sava again. Somebody had brought up that Sava had a question before I ended up accidentally cutting off the entire stream, and you showed up just in time, Rodrigo. So that's interesting. So trying to catch back up. Well, let's work backwards because Sava had his question last, which is basically how do we answer people who don't regard things like the Synod of 1672 in terms of ecumenicity because they're modernists and don't like hearing the words original sin or St. Augustine or things like that.
Well, if they accept the 7 ecumenical councils, and they accept the fact that the 7th, especially the 6th and 7th council and all the councils thereafter, included the 419 canons of Carthage, which include 5 dogmatic canons explicitly about original sin. And Carthage's dogmatic canons are included in all editions of the Pedalian and in the previous Greek and Slavic Nomo canons, then you're going to have a major problem.
Yeah, you're throwing away a lot of
Orthodox. Because I think those can't, because Carthage says those who don't accept original sin are anathematized. So if someone says they don't accept it, they're anathematized.
Yeah.
Simple as that. They're a heretic. I don't care who they are, what position they have, what books they wrote, where they're at, where they're residing at. That's a major problem. And it's easy to go after the low-hanging fruit of the heresy of ecumenism. I mean, it's obviously a heresy.
Yeah.
All right. But I think there are people who have sort of they think they're more sophisticated, and that they're not when they go after, I mean, you could bring up the canons of 419 Carthage if you wanted to, and we could go through those because now I brought one of those up years ago, like 15 years ago, to Father Michael Askell, and he was like, he rejects it. That's what he told me. I was like, well, that's as soon as I lost any respect for teaching authority from him. When I heard that, but I've heard it from other people as well.
Yeah, I mean,
and I'm thinking like this is a major problem. First, there's the rejection of the ecumenical council, the 5th ecumenical council's decree about the 12 approved fathers, because I mentioned St. Augustine. Then there's a rejection of the 6th and 7th council's decrees approving Carthage 419, because they had Greek translations of these, by the way. So the fathers of the councils were well aware of what Carthage 419 said. It was 418. It wasn't like they didn't know what was being talked about. So I don't know what else to tell them.
No, I think that's a very good point. When you're rejecting,
it's a version of modernist heresy that approaches things from what looks like a right wing
renovationist.
Yeah, we look like they're being more correct or what have you, but they're actually being just as heretical. I mean, left-wing renovationists reject original sin as well, and the fact that it's inherited. So they're both in agreement on that idea. Now, they'll say that they don't care what the canons or councils say. Their theology is derived, what they claim is from the fathers, because they've read the church fathers, and you can't argue with them. They're just correct. And so they know better than the fathers of the 5th council, the 6th council, the 7th council. Once you get to that point, you're dealing with somebody in spiritual delusion. That's all. And you can argue with him, but be aware you're arguing with somebody who's some sort of a spiritual insanity. It's like arguing with a mentally deranged person.
Because really, they're completely enthralled to their own will as opposed to the will of the teaching.
Yes, I mean, if they start saying stuff like St. Photius said St. Augustine was a saint because he just thought that's what tradition said. He didn't know any better. Yeah, well, exactly. That's what tradition said. Exactly.
Yeah, and unfortunately, if they're treating that's one thing. If you notice a sort of spiritual arrogance towards the fathers of the church, you're dealing with somebody who isn't part of it.
I mean, especially if they go to the point of talking about. I mean, they'll start talking about the church fathers consistently, and if they don't like them, they'll start using their first names. They won't even say Saint so-and-so said it.
Yeah.
All right? And they can say, well, St. John Chrysostom talked about some father by... Yeah, so other church fathers mentioned some other fathers by their first names. Okay, all right. You're not St. John Chrysostom, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. But now, in any case... So that's I think that's a pretty clear. I mean, would you say that's a complete answer there?
I mean, what I'd also say is that's simply the teaching of the church. If they want to argue they want to argue against the teaching of the church, then we're going to have to go into a more stronger form of apologetics. But you have to understand that's the church teaching.
And then once you're there, it's a question of what is the teaching authority of the church, and so on and so forth. What is the church? But okay, so that I think that was I don't know. Sava did you have any other questions on that? Are you still there? I think your mic should work now.
Hi. Yes. Hopefully my microphone works.
Yep, we hear you.
Okay, good. No, I don't think there's any other questions I had.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for your question, and I'm gonna pull you off. And if you come up with another question, let us know. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Have a great night. Thank you. All right.
By the way, here's the link to the Council of Carthage that was accepted by the Ecumenical Councils. It's included in the old Latin, Greek, and Slavonic ancient collections.
Okay.
Such as the Medallion.
I'll just put that there.
Mm-hmm. And if you go and I wanted to go real quick.
And look at it.
If you go to Canon, it should open up to Count Carthage. If you go to Canon 120.
120. Okay.
Okay. Scroll down to 120. Okay, done. And you went up too far, Father. Go down.
No. Yeah.
Hold on. Go down now. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So 120 says, what does it say, Father?
It is pleased the council to decree that whoever calls Adam the first man created a mortal man so made that whether he sin or not, he's bound to die in the body, that is to depart from the body, not owing to his deserving of this fate by the reason of the sin, but because of a necessity inherent in his nature, let him be anathema.
Okay, what does Canon 121 say? What's the next one? Let's not even go through the interpretations. Let's go to the canons real quick.
It is pleased the council to decree that whosoever denies the little ones newly born from the wombs of their mothers when they are being baptized, or asserts they are being baptized for the remission of sins, but that they have inherited no original sin from Adam, obliging them to be purified in the bath of Renaissance, whence it follows that in these persons a form of baptism for remission of sins is not true, but to be regarded as factitious, let him be anathema. For no other meaning be attached to what the apostle said, sin entered the world through one human being, Romans 5:12. Thus it passed over into all human beings, wherefore all of them have sinned. Then that which the Catholic Church diffused and spread abroad everywhere has ever understood those words to mean. For it is on account of this canon of the faith that even the little ones too, who are as yet incapable of committing any sin of their own to render them guilty of any offense, are truly baptized for the remission of sins, in order that what sin they inherited from the primordial birth may be purified in them through the process of Renaissance.
Okay, so they inherited original sin that had to be removed.
Correct.
Okay, 122 real quick.
It has pleased the council to decree that whosoever should declare that the grace whereby we are justified through Jesus Christ our Lord to be effective only for the remission of sins already perpetrated, and not to afford help by way of preventing perpetration of other sins in addition thereto, let him be anathema.
Okay, 123.
Okay, this one's long. It has pleased the council to decree that whoever should say, with reference to the same grace of God given to our Lord Jesus Christ, that it helps us only to keep from sinning in this respect, that the knowledge and cognizance of sins is revealed to us through it, and enables us to know what to seek after and what to shun, though it does not afford us further help whereby to discern what we ought to do, nor does it further cause us to love and have the strength to do it, let him be anathema. For in view of the fact that the apostle says, knowledge puffeth up, whereas love edifieth. It is utterly impious to believe that we have the grace of Christ for the purpose of puffing ourselves up, but not for the purpose of edifying ourselves, when as a matter of fact both are free gifts of God, that of knowing what we must do and that of loving what we must do, in order that thanks to the edifying power of love, knowledge be unable to puff us up, precisely as have been written out of God, he that teacheth man knowledge, Psalm 94:10. This further too is written, love is of God, 1 John.
Now, we don't have to, we've done this before, but I would encourage people to go through St. Nicodemus and Hieronymus Agapius' interpretations.
In the rudder.
And they're right here. If you actually have a copy of the Pedalion, they're longer notes that are not by Macracus, they're by them. And they go into... Okay, so what was the other question, Father?
Well, the other one was this was about the Book of Parochial Use.
Did someone get it in the mail?
Someone did get it in the mail, and they were concerned about a few things. Now, I pointed out that it was pointed out to me, actually, and then I pointed out back in the intro that it mentions that it uses the King James edition and appears to be using as a base text the Serum used from the 1662 prayer book. Silence, dog. And
from the what?
The 1662 prayer book.
That's not. That's the Anglican prayer book.
Right, and so the text, it looks like it's lifting from that. It is using the Masoretic numbering of the Psalms, and it appears to be using that. But the bigger concern is that somebody had said that that I guess the breviary, I guess, is designed for like parish and local use, but it looks like the prayers of the Divine Office, the Psalms take a month to complete. And I don't know, is that a cathedral use or something, or what is that?
No, I don't know what that is.
Okay, then we have to see the book.
Yeah.
But in any case, I'm sure there is some sort of explanation. As I mentioned, I know Bishop James's history as well as you do. It just I would think that there's something else here that maybe is being misunderstood. But we have to see the book ultimately. Reader John asks, "What do you think of the historical writings and theology of Romanides?"
He's a heretic.
Oh, yeah. I don't have it.
He was a heretic who believed in UFOs, and he was a crank heretic who believed in aliens visiting the Earth with UFOs,
and the historical revisionist,
and that you had to have special spinal fluid.
Oh, the spinal fluid
in order to understand who God was.
And that's
and he believed that if Romanides taught that if you believe the Old Testament was historically accurate, you were not Orthodox, because he believed it all came from Babylonian mythology.
Wow. But yeah, so
he has a modernist.
Yeah,
I don't know why people recommend him so much.
I've said this before. The reason why I think that he is attractive, I hate to say, this.
The HTM recommended him. That's true.
Yeah,
that's because a lot of these modernists, root their ideology in a lot of their ideology is rooted, frankly, in their desire to vindicate themselves from sinfulness without ever having to admit their sin. That's where they despise St. Augustine and anything that talks about redemption, original sin. Because a lot of these people, like Pantaleimon, who promoted Romanides, I mean, you'd think he wouldn't, but Pantaleimon just promoted whoever, because they were involved in gross sexual immoralities to begin with, and so this spilled over into their theology, their pseudo theology. I mean, that's just as simple as that. I mean, and maybe they didn't have to be as bad as he was. All right.
Yeah, I don't think they were as bad. I think that I think that to be fair,
some of them, were pretty bad.
But the thing I try to again I wouldn't link these things together, because Gregory of Colorado, who's been one of Father Pantaleimon's worst detractors, but Gregory of Colorado is a huge fan of Romanides. He's a fan of all that stuff.
Well, and he's also insane.
Well, yeah, but I think the whole point is
so either you're a sexual deviant,
okay,
or you're mentally unstable, or you're some insane person.
I would think it was.
So, in other words, this sort of you can see this sort of manifests in very specific ways, and if you're not those people, you're sort of deceived by them and led along by them without understanding.
Well, I would say that I think that these are people under anathema. That's what you have to understand. We just read those anathemas. Yeah.
These are people who reject those anathemas, and they fall under those anathemas.
Right, but I just
there's
don't
a spiritual sword where God is already cutting them off.
I mean, they were teaching this and promoting this in Holy Cross in the 60s and 70s. I mean,
Holy Cross, what is that?
The Greek Archdiocese Seminary in Boston. Well, that's my point. I wouldn't automatically attribute it to their deviance or their lunacy. I mean, it could just be that they had terrible education from heretics.
I mean, there's probably a lot of deviance and lunacy probably.
I can argue that. Yeah, you are right on that. I just feel uncomfortable.
I think you want to say, are there people who are like abstract heretic? They hold these heresies, but they're not involved in these crazy. They're not mental. They don't belong in an insane asylum, or they're not some sexual deviant that needs to be put in jail. You're probably right. There are people. I mean, there are people like that. You're right. But I'm just saying the reason they got promoted so heavily by those types of people was for that reason.
Yeah.
So I'll meet you halfway and say that.
All right, fair. Raider John says his patristic theology book is making the rounds again. Oh, that's terrible. And South Padre Tony says Ladica's on a roll. Okay. Fair enough. And American Monarch has asked thoughts on Saint Tsar Nicholas II. He's a holy martyr. You know, he's a royal martyr. And,
he's more than a passion bearer. He's a martyr.
Yeah, he's a true martyr, and his family are true martyrs as well.
And by the way, the Grand Duchess Saint Elizabeth was part of the church before she was a martyr.
Mm-hmm. Okay, absolutely true.
She didn't just get baptized.
Crazy people do say that. Yeah. You know, but anyway, so let me see here. What was the other thing? Was we were talking about the St. Patrick book, and that's what led to the question about the book of the parochial use.
I'll have to look into that, and I'll have to make some phone calls.
Now, as for the St. Patrick book, I went through it. It's just like. I'm still not sure what the origin is of this act of faith, hope, and charity and contrition that Catholics use as a substitute for confession, and that is in the book. And I'm like, I don't know the origins of that, or if there is an origin. I've never heard of it.
In the St. Patrick's Prayer book?
Yeah, it's like this. You know,
that's published by the Antiochians, I assume, right?
I think it's published privately. I put up pictures.
I don't know. Nothing.
Yeah, I can put up pictures. Give me just a second, because. It's kind of it's hold on. Let me see if I can put the pictures.
Acts of contrition in the sense you're talking about, like you say, they're supposed to be substitutes that Roman Catholic.
It's like let me see if I can just pull up a picture. Give me a moment. Okay, sure, save that. Yeah, sure, replace, close, open. Okay, so we're back here. All right, so let me share this. Sharing this, and hold on. Really? One moment. Present, share screen, and window. Okay. So this is a table of contents. Let me see if I can just. Okay, so you can see here the Lord's Prayer is fine. The Hail Mary is the Roman Catholic one. The Glory is fine. The Apostle is fine. The Confiteor is fine. We get to here. This is weird because he does include. Get down. Enough, dog. Enough.
Barking doggo.
Yeah, barking doggo is on the attack. So it's on the second side. It's on the right-hand side here. I'll try to make it bigger.
I don't have my glass. I have lost my glasses for the past 3 months.
Yeah, an act of faith, an act of hope, an act of love, and an act of contrition. These are prayers that are kind of read together when you know it's for like indulgences and stuff. I've never heard of this. There's something called the Sarum prayer. I have used our Rite.
That looks like you know what that looks like to me. That looks like a lorica, a Celtic lorica.
Yeah, well, the lorica of St. Patrick has its own section. Yeah, but I don't know what this is.
That might be that looks like that probably does sound like it's maybe from some ancient source.
Yeah, it could well be. It just I've never seen it liturgically.
Sumptuum Praesidium. That's familiar.
Yeah. The Saint Michael prayer does.
Hail Mary. That might actually. I think that looks like that. I've seen things like that are ancient.
Okay. All right. And so then we get to the next thing. And this is a problem. This is a problem also in the parochial use book, as you can see. Psalm 51, which means that it's not using the traditional rendering.
Yeah, I don't know why people continue to do this.
I don't. And I really
It's been
don't.
a problem.
I'm assuming it's just the influence of the KJV.
It's been a problem since Hapgood, and people simply repeat it, and it's something that has to stop.
And of course, it has the rosary in it.
Okay, well, that's obviously an issue.
Yeah. And so, Reader John asked, does your synod have any Eastern Rite parishes? We do. There are people who have come to us from the Eastern Rite. I mean, it's not our primary focus, but if they want to be under our protection, they can. There's also, we do have Eastern Rite parishes. Let me see here. And so that was the thing. And then, I mean, do you want to see the parochial use images or no?
Go ahead. You have it.
I have to pull them up on the Discord. Give me a moment. Okay, let's see here. All right, so share the screen. Okay. Okay, so this is, I guess, part of the comp line. He did say they were put in backwards. So let me. Okay, so there's an order for comp line.
Can you make it bigger? I can't see.
I can try.
You're going to have. It probably.
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Hold on. Let me share this instead.
I mean, I ordered one of these and I have never received this, so I mean, maybe it's mentioned in the mail. So.
Okay, so this is okay. So let me open the other ones in browser. Open in browser. Share this tab instead. Can you see that?
Okay. Okay. All right. What's this? The next page.
The next page. Hold on. Open in browser. Share this tab instead.
Okay, that's the psalm numbering issue. Okay, what's the next page?
Okay. Well, it's also the Anglican text issue. That's
Coverdale. You mean?
Coverdale. Okay, that's what it is then. All right.
Yeah, that's what Coverdale. Okay, that's what they're talking about. That's
okay.
What's used in Hapgood, but we used to have it used in our psalms and such, but we phased out to the.
Yes, it's not as big a deal as
it has to be. It's just I understand. Now there is a Jordanville actually did a corrected Coverdale.
No. Why? I don't know.
Actually, what happened is most of it ended up sounding like the HTM or the Dewey Ream Psalter, because when you correct Coverdale, they all end up sounding like either the HTM or the Jordanville Psalter or the HTM Psalter or the Dewey Ream Psalter.
Yeah,
because believe it or not, it's actually very uniform text, and you have to strive. If you're using traditional English, you have to strive not for it to sound like it's like each other. Anyway.
But that was about it. Let me see here.
What was the thing about a month to complete the Psalter?
I don't know where that is. That wasn't shown in the pictures. Okay. But apparently, it's designed so that the Psalms are read in a month as opposed to a week.
Okay, well, the Canon's usage was still the Psalms, I believe, will recite. Let me see. Okay, it contains extracts from the translations of the use of Serum used in the Book of Common Prayer quotation, used in the scripture quotations in the King James.
Yeah, I just figured that it's just economically using as much of the local language.
Well, I mean, to be honest, there really isn't much of the Serum use left in the 1662 Book of Common Prayer.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the lectionary, I think, is the same. But I mean, I don't. I'm going to have to look at it myself.
What prayer books?
Now remember this. Now this was not published with the imprimatur, as far as I can understand, of the Metropolitan.
Well, yeah, I don't.
So I don't know. So I don't know if this. I don't know exactly what the purpose of the publication is. I'm not trying to attack anybody. I just don't know what exactly.
I think it's supposed to be more like a parish missal. Is what it looks like.
All right. Well, I'll look at it.
What prayer books are in common use among the true Orthodox, both Eastern and Western Rite? I don't know that there are like common prayer books. There are certainly common prayers. Everyone uses the Psalter. All rites have the Akaphist and a few of the other prayers. Many of the prayers that you'll see in the hours of the church will be in different forms, in different arrangements, but they're all there somewhere. And even some of the texts that you'll see in Eastern and Western Rite services. dogs.
Well, a lot of people use things like the old Jordanville prayer book. Even the HTM prayer book is used. There's like a lot of stuff people use. There's this. I have a copy of the Old Believer prayer book, or the old Rite.
Yeah,
I have a copy of that. Mainly, I have to order another copy because it has a Paschal table up into the year like 2100.
Oh wow!
So that's why I think it's really useful. Such.
And then let me see here. And then,
does your dog hear something?
Hold on, I gotta get rid of the dog. Give me just a second.
Oh no!
Come on, you gotta get out. Hold on. Sorry, dog. You gotta go.
Hold
on 1 moment, please.
Poor doggo. See, Andy, you're not barking, huh? All
right. Okay, I'm back. So
now I hear a toy in the background.
Yeah, that's Matishka with a toy. She's trying to get the dog out. This dog seems insistent. I'm putting this chair over here. You're not barking up there.
Okay, anyway. So I don't really know enough. We have to wait to get our edition, and then we'll ask somebody over there in England. About it, so.
Yeah, and so let me see here. So yeah, some people are asking like Jordanville and HTM are the most common ones. Yeah, that's true. Those are them, and also one that is very common that we actually liked a lot, at least in my family, in terms of Eastern books, is the one that has the English and Slavonic on opposite sides. It was a Russian Metropolia edition by the Russian Day Committee. It was I forget who it was, Bishop Apollinari who approved
it. 1957.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
And
I think I have a copy of that somewhere here.
And then somebody said, maybe the Muslims were right about dogs after all. Don't you dare. Don't ever say that again. That's horrible. They're dog killers. In any case, someone asked, what drew you to Western Rite? Well, with me, it was more of a kind of a personal situation thing involving a church I hadn't seen since high school and deciding to meet a little old priest and realizing as a true Orthodox Christian, there was only one synod I could even approach with the question, and it became very complicated. And then I ended up being head of a mission for my family. I'm not. What drew you to the Western Rite, Ludika? Ludika?
Yeah, I believe I just read a lot of history books and church history, and
okay.
I don't know. It's really, I don't know. I just simply thought, well, somebody was right after the Great Schism. During and after the Great Schism. So if there was one church before it, there's one church after it still. But if there was one church east and west before it, then whatever problems, real or imagined, existed before it, then what they were doing before the schism must have been essentially still part of the church. To me, it was rather simple, if you know what I mean.
Right. Now, here's what, this is, I guess, what we were talking about. This Halberg said in the Discord, if you look in the table of contents, the Psalter is said in a month in what they call morning and evening prayer. And then he points to this picture, and I guess it's just labeled by days. Is it just this? This looks like it's just the Psalter, like if you were just reading the Psalms, not actually doing the services.
I don't really have enough.
There's not enough to go on. We have to see the book. I believe that there's probably an innocent explanation for it, but it's a unique organization. I used to collect prayer books. There's a lot of good ones out there. The Staroversky prayer book, it's the Old Believer prayer book. And then let me see here. I said another, yes, the usage of a Psalter in a month. I'm getting the impression just looking at that page, that's more for people who just want to read the Psalms, not actually do the cycle of services. So that's something else. But we'll see when we get the book. But in any case, let's see here. What else have we got here? So there's I don't see any now. Remember, it is a call-in show, so please feel free to ask questions or give me a moment. To ask questions or make comments, or if you want to, because as I mentioned, on every 20 minutes, even though I've missed the last two, in honor of the new year, we're doing an open debate challenge. If you are a World Orthodox who wants to challenge true Orthodoxy, we welcome you to a debate. If you're a Roman Catholic who wants to challenge true Orthodoxy, we welcome you to a debate. If you're a Monophysite, if you're a Protestant, we are looking for your debate challenge.
Wasn't there some subject you mentioned on Friday that you wanted to talk about on Sunday?
Yeah, and I was looking for it, and I can't find it.
I vaguely remember you mentioning it. I don't know what it was.
And so I kind of like I saw that was one of the things I was going to mention this week, but I know there was another one, and I can't remember it, and it's bothering me. And then the St. Patrick's book showed up yesterday, and I thought, well, this will do. And so that's been kind of a thing. Do any of you use Listovka for prayer? I don't know if that's for the room or I don't think either of us do. I don't.
I know what it was.
Oh, okay. Well, what do you? Okay.
We have a lot of us have heard for years on end that Saint Dimitri of Rostov used some sort of psalter for the Theotokos, and and if you read secondary material, they give the impression that what he was using was something like the Little Office. Now, I've heard people still say, yeah, it was a little. I don't know at this point. But what I can say is the material published beginning in the 1880s under the name of St. Dimitri of Rostov is sort of a adapted and expanded version of actually a psalter rewritten so that each of the psalms invoke the Theotokos. And the claim has been that it's analogous to something composed by the Franciscan Bonaventura in the 1300s.
Right, so. Yeah, Bonaventure's Psalter. Yeah.
Bonaventura. All I can say, when you look on the Azbica.ru website, which does generally contain a lot of pre-revolutionary Russian material, and you look under St. Dimitri of Rostov, you could look in the old chat. We probably have the links there, Father. But what you will find is that they say St. Dimitri did not compose this work. They'll say these works were composed and then attributed to him in the 1880s. So, because when you look at the putative psalter of the Theotokos, as opposed to like the Little Office, the Little Office goes back to at least the 10th century, probably to the 700s. The Little Office of Theotokos is simply just the hours or divine office with the regular psalms adapted with Theotokin or Marian antiphons and such. An emphasis. The Psalter to Theotokos seems to have been an invention again of the 13th century.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it looks like what happened is probably after the Belarusian Uniats were taken in by the Russian Church in 1839. Remember, that's like 3 million people they took in straight up from the Uniats. All right, they just said, so one day, the priest gets up there, the ambon, and he reads a proclamation saying they're now part of the Russian Orthodox Church, and if and now that's how they are. Okay, so to me, it seems like this was stuff that was composed among the Unions and then just filtered into the Russian Church thereafter, because it doesn't seem to appear even before the 1880s. Even Metron Anthony Kropovitsky's kind of heretical theory about Christ, the blood that the Lord shed in the garden, is what really caused the redemption. That sounds like I remember Other Paul mentioned that he had heard that from some Roman Catholic books too.
Yeah,
that sounds like that. And Metron Anthony had originally been bishop in Galatia, which was like Western Ukraine. All right, which was heavy Unia influence. So anyway, that's what we were talking, because I remember you said there was somebody arguing or debating that.
Right, somebody was claiming that Saint Dimitri of Rostov was using the Bonaventura.
And remember, there's another text called the Tale of this document that was Tale of Martin the Armenian that was ascribed to Saint Dimitri of Rostov. St. Dimitri reposed in 1699, 1700. You could look that up real quick, something like that.
One moment.
St. Dimitri did. Rostov is what? That's technically, is it still in Ukraine or is it in Russia, Western Russia?
Rostov is technically, I think, in Western Russia. Okay. Give me just one moment.
Because remember, St. Dimitri did argue with the old believers a lot. And what happened was, after he reposed, somebody associated one of his disciples or a disciple of his disciples, somebody claimed they had found
Yeah, he died in 1709. He was born near Kiev, so he was in.
Yeah, he was Ukrainian. He was Ukrainian.
Well, he was Russian. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he spoke a little. He spoke a little Russian, whatever, But it's Ukrainian Russians like talking about Sweden. I mean, imagine if all of Scandinavia was under one empire for hundreds of years. I mean, Swedes and Russia. I mean, Swedes and Norwegians or what have you. But so I know that they attributed this other text to Saint Dimitri, and it got to this point where Peter the Great even said they even beheaded people who denied Saint Dimitri wrote it, but then they later had to admit no, he didn't write it. That was another text.
Okay.
So you have to be careful sometimes with materials that are attributed to a saint, especially in the modern period.
Mm-hmm.
I am less trustworthy of moderns than I am of ancients, especially in the modern period that shows up in 180 years or so after somebody dies.
Yeah.
Now, if they were to publish some sort of manuscript evidence for this, and it can't be, this was copied in 1885 from a lost manuscript and no one has it, and I'm going to become skeptical at that point.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, now there's a couple more questions we've got here. The first one, the same little office of the BVM used by Catholics. No, this isn't. First up, okay, we're talking about three different things. We're talking about the original little office of the Virgin, which didn't really come up in this conversation, but we will come up to it. The little office of the Blessed Virgin used by Catholics, which is really a slightly shorter version of what we use. And then this office of the Theotokos was one where it was just basically the Psalter, which they just changed to make it a little more Marian, and it's something that was...
That's the Bonaventuran Marian Psalter that then was adapted by the Uniates and then somehow was published under the name of St. Dmitri Rostov in the Russian Church.
Over 100 years after his death.
180 years after, almost. 1889.
So it's not the same thing. But now, if you're
the little office of the Blessed Virgin Mary, that goes back at least to the early 10th century. I mean, I
thought it was the 7th.
There were sources that indicate it goes back even to the 700s in some sense.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have manuscripts from, there's obviously the Christ Church Canterbury Supplement manuscript of 1000 AD, which has the little office of the Blessed Virgin Mary.
Right.
I mean, you have some ones from Eisleben, other places in Germany. Even by the time of the Great Schism, it was so widespread that by 1050 or so, when clergy were in the West were considered to have a sort of a normative obligation to sing, not just say, but to sing the regular hours, the canonical hours. It was also in Italy and in parts of France and other places, it was considered obligatory for them to actually then sing the little office of the Blessed Virgin right after that. So it was deeply ingrained by that. And so, I mean, I don't have, there's no problem with it. I mean, of course, I can't say that. I don't know if there may have been, obviously, the Roman Catholic Church with other devotions that they added, like the Immaculate Heart. I mean, there's probably Immaculate Heart stuff in the Roman Catholic editions. So
well, I'll tell you, I'm looking at it's actually a little worse than the Roman Catholic editions that I'm looking at, because I'm actually looking at the current modern little office of the Blessed Virgin. It has only 2 hours.
Okay, so this is the Novasword version also.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So it's a continual. That's an even greater degradation.
Yeah, that's not even the same.
No,
it's not the same thing.
And also that there's a whole other debates about the place of the parishes and that's that, but they don't care about that in the Novasword point. Yeah. But anyway. So.
The next question we got was interesting, and I think it'll also have to do with a convoluted history. Is it better to have an older edition of the Jordanville in True Orthodoxy?
Well, it depends. Do you like the Tale of the Five, or the Tale of, is it the Tale of the Five Prayers?
Yeah, I think so.
I've heard all kinds of different opinions about that. So, I mean, that. Do you want to say a little?
Yeah, the thing that they're talking about here, the thing that's being discussed here is the Jordanville prayer book. The original one was, I believe, translated by Father Lazarus Moore. And the Tale of the Five Prayers is actually in the 1986 edition, and I'm going to just put it up on the screen because I do see that some Rocor parish has it. And
I just put it in the I linked it in the private chat.
Okay. This is a different one. Okay, and so this one is claiming to be from Saint Dimitri also.
Again. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Starting to wonder how much of this stuff attributed to Saint Dimitri of Rostov is actually Saint Dimitri and wasn't just. How far does this go back to the 1880s again?
Yeah, and this is the same thing with Saint Seraphim of Vertitsa, where they claim that he was, that supposedly was promoting the Rosary when he was actually doing the walk around Saint Seraphim's monastery. It's just it's all this. It's what it is. It's really devious ecumenists sticking, and I'm not saying that the people in 1880 who did it were devious ecumenists, but it's devious ecumenists now who know the history, who are manipulating that to manipulate innocent people who don't know better. And that's horrible. But so the Tale of the Five Prayers is in some editions. I'm not sure if it's in the latest edition, but a lot of people find the latest edition.
I don't think it is in the latest edition. I have an older version of it.
Right. I know that Father Lazarus Moore's version has it. The 86 version has it. I don't know if the newest one has it. But the newest one, strangely enough, so I found another complaint about it. Apparently,
here's another question: does the old Rite prayer book of Bishop Danilo, published in 1987, does it have the Tale of the Five Prayers? I can't find my copy at the moment, so I ordered another one off the internet.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So I don't remember if it has a copy of it or not.
But the point is,
old sources. So
yeah, and so the point is that. But the new version apparently has another problem because people know that I guess the New Jordanville prayer book is printed in China, whereas previous ones were not. So
has the Semjoba Pachai Press stopped printing the text, or is it?
Well, they print it abroad and they print the text abroad and have it shipped back.
Oh, that's unfortunate. I mean, we use Lulu, which I'm sure is that done in America or Korea?
Yeah, it's print on demand. I believe it's done in America, and actually they have I think they have presses in every continent, basically.
I like the idea of having your own printing press.
Yeah, and then
Bishop James has his own printing press.
That's something we need. We need a printing press. Okay, if anyone wants to donate for a printing press, they start at $10,000. Just kidding, guys.
I would want a non-electric printing press. I'm not to be idiosyncratic, but I have this theory that you have to gradually have backup systems in case the electrical grid or the computer.
That's true. That's true.
Like you need a backup way to wash your clothes. Obviously, I'll give you an example. I went to our dryer was broken for about a week, 10 days. So I just hung stuff up. I didn't have a clothesline. I don't know. I thought we had a clothes. You know what a clothesline is, right?
Yes, but we have.
So I went to Walmart. I was like, I'm gonna just go buy a clothesline. Well, I looked in the laundry section, and there were no clotheslines.
You don't find it's in the hardware section.
Is it? It is okay. All right.
Okay, then Thomistic Monster says the Novasword version barely resembles the Latin one. Yeah,
I have absolutely. You're right.
Probably.
In fact, I can tell you one of the reasons. And this has been brought up. One of the reasons the Russian Church abroad in the late 60s and 70s, they published that 1971 statement that said they recommended baptism for everybody, although they
the 1971
exceptions of chrismation and such.
Right, because they took the exorcisms out.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons they mentioned that was because I think they said the Westerners at the time had so altered their own traditions, it was impossible to even recognize anything in it. Like you could look like for example, you could look at, let's say, the 1950 Pontificale Romanum, and in the Ordinal, for example.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that's nearly identical, like 99% identical, the Ordinal, to stuff you find from 1000, 950, 900, 850, 800, going back even to the Leonine Sacramentary 550. So, there was the schism away from the church and such, but you still have this sort of identifiable rite that was being done for a long time. And even the Tridentine rite, the main problem that, our criticism of the Tridentine rite, or things that were abuses and derogations from it, like the Low Mass, the removal of the offertory verses.
Hold on one second.
Various things that and such. Obviously, unleavened bread, what have you, but textual-wise, you could look at the Tridentine offertory, and you can find identical offertories in, like the Romano-German pontificals from 950. I mean, which probably indicates that the reason the Tridentine Offertory took the form it did was because you had all these, the Avignon papacy and German popes in the 14th and 15th century just brought the text back. Whereas, like in Northern Europe, England, Northern Europe, by and large, they had a single offering of the bread on the paten and the wine mixed with water in the chalice with Praesuscipe Sancti Trinitas. Whereas in the southern Germany and southern French usage, for some reason, they had adopted, maybe and in Milan too, they had adopted a dual offering at the offertory and such. So I mean, so you have this major problem where you can compare, you can look at for all its major problems, and I'm not, and it's the fact that we're talking about schism and heresy, obviously. You could at least textually look at, like, let's say the dedication of a church, all right, or the ordination prayers from the Roman Catholic Tridentine Rite, and say that this is textually largely identical, if not completely, not nearly 100% so, with some few exceptions, to things from the 10th or 9th or 8th, or even going back to the 500s. You cannot say that now.
Right. The Novasword is completely
It's
different.
Literally, they invented stuff.
Yeah.
It's literally invented. They invented material wholesale out of cloth.
All right. Well,
so this is why I feel. This is why when you have some Roman Catholics that will attack Western Rite Orthodox, if they want to pay attention, just sort of scared of us, but if they even pay attention, they're like, "Oh, this is a hybrid rite," and you begin to ask them what's so hybrid about it, and they're like, "Well, you use the old calendar." I mean, you're using the Novasword, or it's something like I don't know. I'm not even sure of the other stuff. Like, oh, you have an epiclesis in the Roman canon of the Mass, and then they have the Novasword, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
really,
yeah. And the epiclesis is itself Western. It comes from the Gothic sacramentary.
Yes. So it's sort of strange.
All right, so we're getting more texts coming in. I mean, more questions. Thoughts on 2025? I don't honestly have any. I believe that a lot of people are concerned about 2025 because it sounds good. Like, it's like a nice set date when the ecumenists and they're planning like very ecumenical things. Are they going to do anything different? I don't think so. This is just me. Maybe you disagree with Ladika, but I think that they're going to keep the same program as it is because they've already established a long-term program in place to indoctrinate and destroy the faith of the children. So from my perspective, why would they change that now? Why would they want people to suddenly take off and leave?
Never underestimate
the stupidity of
what the fan art and its backers will actually do. I understand your point, and I agree with it, because who would have thought they would actually go through with the 2018 Kievan autocephaly?
Yeah,
true. Remember, the Moscow Patriarchs and all kinds of people, they actually had personal meetings. They're in all kinds of these issues that actually happened, and they still did it.
Yeah.
And who would have believed that? And I remember when it happened, people were saying, "Well, it's only
going to be it'll be a month or so. Then
it becomes the other new calendars. Then it becomes Alexandria. Then it becomes Cyprus. Then I'm not sure who else besides the Greeks, the Greek calendars. But they're working on the Romanian Patriarch, and that probably will give in time and such. But who knows? A lot can happen in 2 years. So
that's true.
So you have to. I mean, I'm not gonna suddenly give up. I'm like, oh well, it didn't happen, so I guess I'm not gonna act like that.
Okay.
But
someone said, wasn't Father Lazarus more a universalist or have universalist tendencies? I've never heard that.
I have heard some stuff like that. Yes.
Okay. I don't know about it.
He did not. I think did he die in Roquefort or did he leave?
No, he died in Roquefort. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's very possible. I'll be frank. You had people in the 70s and 80s, you had other
Romanitas.
You had people bringing stuff like that into Roquefort. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he said something like, "We can pray that there will be nobody left in hell." I mean, I've heard that. The problem is that is not conformable to any patristic text. It simply is not.
Without having an example, I don't feel comfortable accusing them.
The problem is that in the Book of Revelation, which gives us an accurate picture, it says that there will be people thrown into hell and then thrown into the lake of fire after the last judgment.
Yeah,
there forever.
That's the teaching of the church. There's no way.
We have to accept that. We can try to preach the gospel and save as many as possible, But you have to also understand, with the granting, this is part of the theodicy, I guess you could say, with the granting of free will to man, you're going to have people who choose otherwise than to follow Christ. That's reality.
When Reader John writes, 2011, Jordanville does not pray for the godless authorities anymore since they united with Moscow. That were under the godless authorities.
It doesn't pray for. It doesn't pray against the godless.
Pray against. Assuming that pray against the godless authorities, but
they've removed that.
To be fair, I mean, officially they're not godless authorities anymore. They have 4 gods. So,
well, remember they used to be. I recall there used to be this. The Roquefort liturgy used to have like a whole extra section added to it.
Mm-hmm.
That was like an extra litany and a whole long prayer that was done at every service, I think, for the liberation of Russia from the godless authorities.
Yeah,
that used to be part of it. I don't think they do that anymore, right?
No, that's not.
And so, and they obviously commemorate Kirill.
Yep.
So obviously that's a big problem.
Reader John asks, have any liturgical texts survived from Northumbria?
Sure.
Yep.
There is. I mean, York would be part of Northumbria, I believe. There is the York Miss, the York Pontifical, sometimes called the Pontifical of St. Egbert of York, who was Archbishop of York in 750. So, I mean, there is some, even the Stowe Missal, which people talk about, which is not really a missal, it's a mass book carried around by a priest. Yeah, it's basically a mass, like the mass book we publish, all right?
Right.
Imagine if you took that and I added like a few mass, like 20 mass propers to the back of it, and a baptism service, and a holy unction service, and you had to carry that around to villages. That's basically what it is. I think that may come from Northumbria or from southern Scotland, and such. So I think there are gospel books that that have lectionary texts that come from Northumbria. There is a book published, and I have to find it now, but it contains a listing of all surviving liturgical manuscripts from lectionaries to sacramentaries, etc., from the Anglo-Saxon period. So you can maybe look it up. I can't quite remember that.
Yeah, there are, though. It's just a matter of looking up those particular sets of liturgical texts. But a lot of that would, and this is one thing to
Although Northumbria was incorporated into the greater Anglo-Saxon kingdom. See, there was the 7 kingdoms the Anglo-Saxons had, the Heptarchy, and then gradually, after the Viking invasions of the 800s, and King Alfred, who's king of Wessex, I believe, he sort of drove them back, and then gradually, I believe the House of Wessex, the King Alfred's house, gradually united through marriages the other kingdoms. So maybe around 950, England as a united kingdom, because that was the only way to survive. I think they realized if you're having these foreign invading forces attacking you, you can't simply continue to persist as 7 kingdoms with one kingdom making deals with the Danes when the other kingdom isn't. So anyway, I think there are. I could look it up, I guess, right now. But any other questions?
I don't see any right now, and actually, we're kind of heading into the. We got divided up, so it looks like 53 minutes, but we're actually up to the probably hour and 50-minute mark. So we're just about moving into the last 10 minutes before we usually wrap up. So we've basically gone 2 hours on the 2 shows. Thank you for everyone who found us again. We didn't mean to completely disconnect while I was trying to fix the audio issues, and I had to try to use the phone so I could hear Salva, and then the next thing you know, I disconnected the entire show and had to create a new one.
You can I have that book. Just put in the private chat. That mainly deals with the late Anglo-Saxon period, but that should help.
Okay. Let me copy that link address. I'll put this in Reader John. That way you can take a look.
I mean, there are other books that deal with earlier mid material and such. The problem generally with manuscripts is that once you start going back before the year 700, they start to get less and less often found. That's not the right word to do it. Like, for example, you're not going to find a anything near as complete as Barberini Codex for the Euchologian before 780. I mean, that's the earliest one, and that doesn't even have the diaconal petitions like this. It doesn't even call it this liturgy of St. Chrysostom or Basil. It just lists these two different liturgies, and then they're pre-sanctified. The priest parts, the prayers are really not even quite the same as the ones you're used to in the Eastern Rite, but it's the basic. It still has the basic like anaphoras and things like that. In the Eastern Empire, the reason you have so fewer books is because, like during the War of Islam, so much was simply destroyed. Like flat out, cities burned to the ground, libraries destroyed. Like the Library of Caesarea,
especially libraries.
Well, the Library of Caesarea had like 300,000 volumes, and then after the Battle of Caesarea, it had nothing left. I think it was all destroyed. And this is why you have these like a sort of red atheists that talk about the Antikythera mechanism and that how the Christians stopped the computer revolution.
Yeah, I mean,
the Antikythera mechanism was from the 2nd century BC. If they hadn't invented an electronic computer by 300 AD, and they had 500 years, a mechanical clock, a mechanical astronomical device that remember, it's not self-moving. You have to turn gears on it.
Yeah.
Right? It's basically the Byzantines built those things. People forget in the 500s. You had I sent you that link, the Byzantine sundial, which is also similar complexity. All right, there were handheld mechanical calculators that you had to input the data, and you could figure out the next full moon or new moon or what have you. If you couldn't do it yourself, or eclipse or what have you. So, I mean, we do have. I mean, I think if the earliest surviving manuscripts of the the sermons of Saint Chrysostom are maybe from like 680 and such. We have a lot of fragments. They have, you could theoretically probably piece a lot of stuff together from like a scraps of material. They have done that, by the way, because when the persecution under Diocletian happened, the vast majority of scripture, I think they have proof, they have suggested that the vast majority of copies of biblical manuscripts were destroyed. A lot survived, but the majority were destroyed. Because during the Diocletian persecution, one of the things they did, a lot of local authorities did, at the instigation of the imperial government, was not necessarily, they did kill people, but they oftentimes just said, give us the books.
Yeah.
And that was the whole traditorial.
Give us the books and sacrifice.
Exactly. That's what happened to that. Yeah, just give us the books and you don't have to do anything. So, but you can still find a significant amount of the manuscripts and fragmentary form of the scriptures and other church fathers even from the 2nd and 3rd century. And if you have the patience of some of these, and I do respect these genuine scholars, they will piece these things together. Like you can find fragments from Saint Irenaeus of Lyon from 200 AD, which is amazing. Saint Irenaeus proposed in 180 AD, I believe, when he wrote his text in 170. I mean, to find even a fragment of a book 20 to 30 years after the author died from the ancient world is amazing. It'd be like finding a copy of, one of the Socratic dialogues, 20 years after Plato died. So, like, I don't know, that would be like 300 AD or something like that. I can't remember when Plato died. But you're not going to find that. The closest you're going to find in a lot of the classical pre-Christian texts, oftentimes are going to be, 100, maybe 200-300 years after somebody died, maybe even 500 years. Like I think the earliest copies, I think they do have some fragments of on the Gallic Wars from like 200 AD and such. The first complete copies come from Irish monasteries in the 500s or 600s or something like that.
Right. So,
but the reason so much survived in the West was because even though we had barbarian invasions, remember, Father Joseph, the Vandals were pretty violent. So I mean that they were called the Vandals for a reason. All right.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the other barbarian tribes, they weren't on their own jihad, you might say. Yeah, they were Arian heretics. All right. Some of them weren't actually. I mean, some of them, like the Visigoths and other barbarians, most of them were Arians, some were pagans, and there were actually some that had remained Orthodox, because the Gothic tribes had originally converted to Orthodoxy, but then they were corrupted during the time of Wulfilas, who had originally been a disciple of Saint Theophilus, but then they sent him to Constantinople when he was required to stay there for 5 years, and the Arian patriarch sort of just corrupted his mind, what have you. But St. Basil and St. Augustine, even in their days, talk about many of the Gothic peoples, Visigoths and others, Ostrogoths, that were Orthodox. And that's the 380s and 370s, 80s, and 90s and such. So if you had monasteries, there wasn't this intent to destroy everything. what determines the survival at that point is how long can you preserve the actual text and the weather conditions, and then I guess the Viking invasion. Obviously, the Vikings did destroy a lot in England, by the way, and then the Normans destroyed a lot in England. So we have a lot preserved, but we actually. I think we don't know. I'm not sure if the icons, the original 2 icons that St. Augustine of Canterbury brought with him to Kent, survived, or they weren't destroyed into intervening periods. So, I mean, a lot was destroyed in the Reformation, and then a lot was destroyed also. In England's a little bit different case because you have these 4 periods of destruction. And then, of course, in France, the Huguenots destroyed the body of Saint Irenaeus of Lyon, and I think they burned down the library of Lorenz, and they destroyed. The Huguenots destroyed a large amount of ancient shrines and libraries as well. So, okay, well, I assume we have no other questions, Father Jess?
I'm going to check right now. Let me see here. Okay, Reader John asks for a blessing.
God bless. You do have a lot of Byzantine manuscripts that start to reappear in the 800s and 900s. I think that was during the revivals that happened under the Macedonian dynasties.
Oh, okay.
The empire kind of revived, so you can find a lot of materials that survived. And if you go to, but that's the 800s and 900s. If you go to, there are digitized manuscripts at St. Catherine's Monastery, and you will find manuscripts from the 800s and 900s. There's a break-off point where once Islam comes to the area, you're not going to really find much before that. It destroyed a tremendous amount of material. And if it didn't destroy it, it would have just taken the books and repurposed them. Like they would scrape the material off. And there's this research they do called palimpsest research, where someone would take a book, they'd scrape off the original letters, and then they'd write something new on it. All right. And if you use certain X-rays and other chemical techniques, you can kind of recover the original material, which is why they talk about sometimes the Socrates. Archimedes' work on conic sections or something like that was made in the 10th century in Constantinople. They act sort of like nobody had an edition of it when the copy. They sort of act like the Christians destroyed all primitive versions of this proto-calculus, whereas in the Byzantine Empire they were making copies of this manuscript in the imperial scriptoriums in the 10th century.
Yeah, that's
so. Just because you have just because you have Archimedes' work, that doesn't mean you're going to make this leap to Isaac Newton calculus. And one of the reasons people forget is they had to use letters. Try to do math with Roman numerals, Father Joseph.
Oh yeah, no, I know.
Think of trying to do quadratic equations and algebra with Roman numerals.
Right.
It's basically you're constructing these giant word arguments, like a word problem. That was how they phrased it. It's going to be extremely difficult to keep all this in your mind. You can imagine why some of the Greeks preferred geometry over everything else. Okay, I think we can go, I guess.
Yeah, I think that we covered everything here. Since 2004, NFTU has been reporting on events related to true orthodoxy, as well as underreported events related to the greatest heresy of our age, ecumenism, a global web of interreligious syncretism in which the hierarchy of world orthodoxy is now inextricably enmeshed. When we began this page, we never thought we'd be in the middle of a global war for the salvation of souls. But things never work out the way that we plan, and I'm going full-time to expose ecumenical heresy where it can be found, help Orthodox Christians find their way home, and do our part to stop the globalists from fulfilling their plans of one world religion, the religion of Antichrist. But as always, we need your help. Subscribe and support us at nftu.net, on our Subscribe Star, or on Odyssey. Keep watching. We're just getting started. Vladika Benedicite.
Benedicite.
Have a good night, everyone.